So we know that the United States is a democracy, but you may be asking yourself, what kind of a democracy is the United States? The United States is a representative democracy, meaning that voters elect people who represent them in governmental bodies. In a representative democracy, however, the citizens do not govern directly. Instead, they elect representatives to make decisions and pass laws on behalf of all the people. Thus, United States citizens vote for members of Congress, the president and vice president, also members of state legislatures, governors, mayors, members of town councils and school boards, all to act on their behalf. Most representative governments favor majoritarianism, or majority rule. The opinions of the majority of the people who vote have more influence with government than those of the minority. If the number of elected representatives who favor a proposed law is greater than those who oppose it, the law will be enacted. However, since 1945, only about 42% of eligible Americans have voted for members of Congress in years when there was no presidential election. These are called midterm elections. So representatives can be sent to Congress with only about 22% of eligible voters explicitly supporting them. Thus, even though many voters may be cast for a Democrat or for a candidate from the Green Party, for example, a Republican might ultimately win the election because one feature of an American democracy is that majority rules. That is, if more Americans vote for Republicans than for candidates from other parties, for example, the Republicans will govern because they represent the majority. Majority rule means that not every voter gets the representation he or she wants. There are only rare exceptions to majority rule. For example, the president is elected indirectly through the Electoral College. There are many critics of the Electoral College, and these critics of the Electoral College argue that it subverts majority rule, as well as discourages political participation and may lead to major problems if a faithless elector votes against a candidate. In the 2016 election, the majority of Americans voted for Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, but Republican Donald Trump was elected president indirectly by the Electoral College. This led to protests where people chanted, "Not my president," despite the fact that the Electoral College system worked the way it was supposed to. In fact, by some estimates, there may have been more protesters in Washington in January 2017 than supporters of the president at his inauguration, but the president denies this was the case. There have been many who have worked in the Senate to abolish the Electoral College to enable the president to be elected directly by the people. Senator Birch Bayh in the 1960s was one of these, and Senator Hillary Clinton spoke of it after the 2000 election when Democratic candidate Al Gore won the popular vote, but he lost the electoral vote and therefore did not become president. But so far, this work in the Senate to abolish the Electoral College has not succeeded. In some instances, though, Americans do exercise direct democracy. In other words, people participate directly in the government's decisions. Direct democracy today can be seen in New England town meetings, where residents of a town make decisions about local matters. Other manifestations of direct democracy come in the form of initiatives, also known as propositions, and referenda, the plural of referendum. In 2006, voters in Michigan voted on an initiative to eliminate affirmative action programs in public universities and also in state employment. Affirmative action programs seek to compensate for past discrimination by giving special attention in hiring and college or university admissions to people from the groups discriminated against. The state most associated with direct democracy is California. California's Proposition 215, the Compassionate Care Use Act, was on the November 6, 1966 ballot in California and is an example of how, in the 21st century, many states have followed suit, allowing citizens to vote directly on laws proposed by the state legislature. Marijuana reform laws, both medical and recreational use, have been passed at the state level in many states, and the federal government may follow. In a referendum, a piece of legislation, intended or actual, is submitted directly to the people for approval. In the United States today, direct democracy in the form of initiative, recall, and referendum is most common in the western states, with the exception of Texas. If an interest group lobbying for policy reform thinks an idea will be more popular with the people than with their representatives, they might push for it to be placed on the ballot in the form of a referendum. Interest groups and lobbying are discussed in Module 4, but for now, review this module closely and review your notes and keep studying.